All right, we're back on the Motor Mouth podcast. This is Diesel Joe. I'm here with Dan Siri.
So you've heard about me, my story. What about you? Where'd you come from?
Well, I've worked on stuff as a kid. My dad would bring lawnmowers home and stuff. That's kind of how I learned. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, I guess is kind of how I would say it. Or there's not much I won't touch, and I'm not afraid to. It's one of them things. I worked on mowers and worked on cars and stuff, growing up, just grew up with 5 brothers. So it was, one of them things, you learn from the next, my older brothers. And then, one of my buddies was a mechanic at First Student. And, he called me up. I was driving
First
a truck.
Student?
School bus.
Okay.
Yeah. Got in there and, it was something that, engines just clicked with me. It was something I didn't really think of when, going to in high school and stuff. I wanted to be a teacher. I liked football, and then it was like, maybe I'll be a teacher. And then, life hits, and you gotta get out and make some money. So life happens. Buddy of mine called me and was like, "Hey, what do you think about being a mechanic?" That was probably 15 years ago or so. And, got in school buses, and, with school buses, everything's got to be to the T. You got other people's kids on, my kids, your kids, everybody, their kids are on riding that bus. So, I mean, if you got a screw loose in the ceiling, it's an out of service. So, I mean, I take that same, step with our trucks. It's one of them things that it's got to be perfect, when it rolls out, because in the end, my kids are riding next to that truck on the road, or your kids,
Right,
it's one of them things. And, when I was, working on school buses, they idle all the time. So, that's the big thing you can't do to a diesel engine is idle it. So, I got into the, learning about the soot slayer and, what it does, because school buses idle all the time. We got it here and, we were seeing all the breakdowns when I first, walked in this place, regenning every day continuously, wiping out turbos, plugged up EGRs, bad actuators, differential pressure sensors, you name it, top to bottom, we were doing them. And I had talked to Corey about, getting the soot slayer, bringing it in. And I mean, it's crazy, we might have a, DPF go bad because of, longevity, there's a shelf life on everything. Yours was at 500,000 miles. That's kind of about what you'll get out of one. So, bring it in, run the soot slayer on it, cleans it out. And I bet you don't see a regen light, other than your maybe once or every couple weeks, you'll see it, driving up the highway, and it, run, and then you're golden.
Because was it a month or so ago or whatever? Because I remember kept calling you.
Yeah.
I felt like I was.
It's not that's
I
what
I always feel like I'm bothering you,
Nope.
and especially when I
That's
call
what I get paid to do.
15 times in one day, and it's like, hey, and I got an idea of, okay, this is probably what it is, but I always feel better if you look at it on your phone or whatever, because I don't want to damage it anymore.
Yeah, you care, that's what it's all about, caring about the trucks and shit like that. Until next time, remember, get the shit out of your engine.